So hi everyone and welcome to our webinar, Master Data Management for Corporate Functions. Thank you very much for joining us today. We will spend together about 45 minutes discussing this topic. So my name is Christophe Barriolade. I am CEO of Orchestra Networks, a Master Data Management software vendor. And joining me today is Scott Moore, Director of Technical Services at Orchestra Networks. So we'll start the presentation today and in about 15 minutes describing the main challenges of MDM for corporate functions, presenting some real cases and also customer story around managing master data across finance, HR, risk, and procurement. And then we'll spend about 20 to 25 minutes in a live demo with Scott, showing you some real example of master data management for corporate functions. So first of all, let's start by trying to understand why MDM matters for corporate functions. Probably a lot of you have already heard about MDM, and most of the vendors and analysts describe MDM as a way to better manage customer or product data. So while those master data are very important for companies, there's also a very large or very wide set of master data that are used by other functions, including finance, human resources, procurement, risk and compliance. And actually, those functions have to manage a lot of different types of reference or master data in a lot of applications. So you can see on this first illustration that those functions have to deal with organization charts, employee data, legal entities hierarchies, a lot of codification, counterparties, suppliers or geographies. And clearly today, those master data are duplicated in many spreadsheets, bespoke systems, or ERPs. So it is becoming critical to have a better central management and governance of all those data across all the corporate functions. So let me give you two examples. The first example is MDM in the finance office. Today, most of finance teams need to align their accounting structures, organization charts, and financial hierarchies across enterprise financial and analytical systems. Again, most of those data are today duplicated in many systems or many spreadsheets. If we look at the master data landscape of a finance team, we find a lot of reference data, including GL accounts or chart of accounts, geographies, parties, cost centers, assets, legal entities, and various KPIs. And all those reference data need to be synchronized with a lot of different applications. So on the left side, you can see a lot of operational systems like ERP for core accounting or spend management. And on the right side, business intelligence and enterprise performance management solutions for budgeting, forecasting, financial close, etc. And so it's becoming critical to have one version of all those data with the right synchronization with all applications. Actually, for a finance team, there's a lot of drivers for an MDM initiative, such as, for example, the ability to manage a global view of financial hierarchies and the ability to adapt those hierarchies to local context. So a good example is having one chart of accounts for the whole company and all its subsidiaries and legal entities. Another one is speed of change, where the finance team has to react to reorganization or new businesses, including merger and acquisitions. And again, all those data have to be shared across all financial applications. Finance team also needs to better comply to new standards, new regulations. And finally, they need to access to those reference data from inside the company, but also from the outside. So typically, an auditor would like to have access to a unique definition of those financial hierarchies. And then the finance team has to share those reference data across other functions, because probably HR, risk, procurement, and others have to access and sometimes to manage those financial hierarchies. Another example is MDM in the HR office, where the HR team needs to build, manage, and share a single view of employees, organization structures, and various human resources reference data. If we look at the master data landscape for the HR function, we find again a lot of master data, starting with the employee, which is probably the core master data for the HR, but around that, organizations, compensations, job descriptions, workplaces, careers, and again, various KPIs. And those reference data needs also to be synchronized with a lot of HR systems, starting from the payroll to new systems or new applications for example, for managing careers, work time, benefits, training, or relocation. So again, it's very important to have a single definition of all those master data and a synchronization with applications. The HR function has also its own drivers for an MDM initiatives. A good one is the deployment of new HR services. Today, a lot of companies are deploying HR services in both on-premise and cloud applications. So the ability to have one single employee master is becoming critical to better and easily connect those new applications to the MDM. Again, merger and acquisition are important, as well as reorganization, where the HR department needs to react very quickly and work in future version of the organization chart of the company. Outsourcing of HR services is also important, as well as a better knowledge and better reporting on HR data. And finally, the need for adapting the HR data to local markets and regulations. And as it is the case for finance, HR needs also to share those data across other functions, again, like finance, risk, or procurement. So as you can see, each function has its own requirement for an MDM solution, and there is also a requirement for sharing those data across the various functions. So now, let's discuss the solution and what are the key requirements for a business user for an MDM solution. First, MDM for corporate function is clearly one of the top use cases of our customers at Orchestra Networks. And I will mention a recent research note from Gartner, which has been published in 2 parts, called The View of MDM Vendors' Experience in Handling Multiple Master Data Domains. In this note, among 10 vendors, including the large players, Orchestra Networks is the only one to be ranked as good in both MDM for human capital and MDM for finance. So this shows very well the positioning of our company, providing an MDM solution that is clearly multi-domain and that provides data governance capabilities for the business users. So if we look now at what are the solutions available on the market compared to Orchestra Networks, on the left side, you find a lot of MDM software designed originally for a specific data domain like customer or product. While those solutions are deployed widely, they are designed for specific domains, which means they are not really adapted to absorb the complexity of corporate function master data. They usually rely on rigid models and they are weak on governance without providing sophisticated authoring workflow for business users. In comparison, the approach of our software, which is called EBX5, is to provide a true multi-domain solution, which is model-driven. So what you model is what you get, and which provide end users with a web-based user experience and a lot of sophisticated features for data management, hierarchies, workflow, version control, etc. So now if we look at what are the core requirements of business users, I have selected 5 top requirements. The first one, clearly, most of business users across those different functions need to author and manage very complex hierarchies based on different models and business rules. So it means that most of the time the MDM is centralized and most of the authoring is done in the MDM UI. So for that, and I think you will see that very clearly in Scott's demo in a few minutes, EBX5 provides first a 100% web-based user experience, so no complex tool to deploy, very easy UI, which includes hierarchy management, so where you can configure and display very complex hierarchies. It is based on a flexible data modeling, so you can basically model any entity in the MDM. And also you can add business rules, so when you need to enforce validation controls or quality checks, you can define those rules at the model level. And again, all the user interface is automatically generated from the model. So that's the first requirement. The second one is that business users need to collaborate. MDM is becoming really a collaboration process for change management, for approvals, inside a function or across, again, multiple corporate functions. So EBX5 comes with an embedded workflow, which is a collaborative tool, very easy to configure, which provides business user with a UI for data management and advanced features for notification and task management. So basically, this workflow is becoming the day-to-day front end for business users. Very easy to learn, very easy to use. The third requirement is something I think critical for corporate functions, which is basically the management of time. In most cases, business users need to work at the same time in past, present, and future version of their data. So they don't have just one version like the customer master, they have multiple versions. A very good example is an organization hierarchy, where you need to work on your current organization, you need to keep track of the past, but also you need to work on future reorganization, let's say for next quarter or next year. So EBX5 comes with a sophisticated version control engine, which allows to manage all those past and future versions at the same time. And then it's very easy to compare and merge versions together. In addition, it provides a full history of data at record level. The fourth requirement we see is security. Business users are dealing with sensitive reference data because of regulatory compliance or some critical business entities. So they need to enforce strict permissions and security policies on the MDM, and also they need to keep track of everything. So they need a detailed audit trail of each single transaction or update on the MDM. So EBX5 provides role-based security at field level. It also allows to define advanced permission rules to comply to any security policy. It can be fully integrated with enterprise directories and single sign-on infrastructure. And finally, provide an audit trail which keeps track of all updates on the MDM. And the final point is around integration. Because clearly a central MDM for corporate functions needs to be synchronized with both source and target systems and using the standard existing middleware infrastructure. So the approach of EBX5 is to provide a data service layer based on web services, or also a file import-export interface, which allows a standard-based integration with any ETL or ESB in the enterprise. So this way, the master data can be dynamically exposed as a service to be consumed by any middleware. So, as you can see, those top requirements are very specific and usually very important across those corporate functions. Let me give you very quickly 2 examples before we jump to the demo. The first customer is BNP Paribas. BNP Paribas is one of our largest customers worldwide. They have started using our EBX5 software 4 years ago. And as you can see on this illustration, BNP has started on a very specific initiative around credit risk and delivered a quick project in a few months. But then they decided to reuse and deploy the technology across a lot of corporate functions. So that's the red line, covering suppliers, organization hierarchies, operational risk, global HR, and corporate finance. And also, as you can see, some of their line of business, like real estate or insurance, have also deployed the technology and sometimes define relationships between their own MDM and the corporate MDM. So the story behind BNP Paribas is that such a technology can be deployed step by step, starting very small on a first business initiative and then reusing and growing the models and the governance across all those functions. Another example is Technip. Technip is a large oil and gas engineering company with around 30,000 employees. And Technip has also deployed EBX across most of its corporate functions, including finance, HR, health and safety, procurement, and risk. So it's today around 16 master data families across all those business lines. And again, the benefit of EBX was quick implementation, but also a very high adoption rate by business users. So thanks to the web UI you will see in a minute, the ability for business users to adopt and become an active user of the MDM was critical for the success of Technip's project. So now I propose to go to the demo, and so I will ask Scott Moore. So Scott is our Director of Technical Services to show you live the solution on some financial and HR hierarchies example.